Let's finish up our running backs preview part 2 right now on Fantasy Football Today in 5. I'm Adam Azer with Jamie Eisenberg. All right, so Jamie, we did part 1 yesterday. This is part 2. And on the full-length show, we talked about really everything but the top 5 or 6 running backs. But when you look at starting with, say, the Nick Chubb, Jonathan Taylor, Joe Mixon, Antonio Gibson group through the next round or 2, right? The Chris Carson, Josh Jacobs, Myles Gaskin group. How many of those running backs do you typically have on your team? Do you just maybe one? Like, let's say you take a running back in the first round and then you take one more and then you wait a while, or like, how do you approach it with that group?
Most likely it's just one of those guys, unless I'm picking in the front end of the top of the first round and 2 of them are available back end of the second, beginning part of the third of the first group of guys that you mentioned, So in the rare instance when the Colts injuries first happened and Jonathan Taylor was falling pretty far in drafts, or the early part of the offseason when Antonio Gibson was still available, I'll throw Clyde Edwards-Helaire into that group as well. And now in the part of the drafts where I've come around a little bit on David Montgomery with the Tariq Cohen situation. So if I want to go 3 running backs to start my team, or running back, receiver, running back, I'll end up taking 2 of those guys in the early third. Again, if I'm picking at the early part of the first round, but for the most part, it's probably just one of those guys in totality, simply because I don't like to take 3 running backs in a row, and typically I'm going to take a running back in the first round.
Okay, you really like Myles Gaskin. We had a nice debate about Myles Gaskin. What is it that you're sold on?
I think just what we saw last year in the offseason. Last year when he was the guy, he was the guy. And so after week 3, when he took over the job from Jordan Howard, every time he was healthy, he appeared in 10 games. He was on pace for over 800 rushing yards and over 600 receiving yards. And as I told you in the full-length show, only one running back did that for the season. That was Alvin Kamara. So, if you tell me he's got that type of potential, 60-plus catches as well, the Dolphins told us this offseason, I think that they feel comfortable with him, the group as a whole, by bringing in only Malcolm Brown. And from what I was told, Malcolm Brown hasn't been doing very much in terms of, as an offensive player. So I think Gaskin's in line to be that guy. Brian Flores seems to like him. That's what he told Pete Prisco when he was down in Miami. So I think, Gaskin is going to be a breakout candidate if he can stay on the field for the majority of the season.
One guy I'm not taking is Kareem Hunt. Looking at it today, or earlier today, I guess I didn't realize exactly the first 3 games of the year, he got a pretty good amount of work. Nick Chubb was healthy. Kareem Hunt got a pretty good amount of work. But in 2 of those 3 games, a lot of it came in garbage time. Week 1 was a blowout loss. Week 3 was a pretty comfortable win. And that really inflated Kareem Hunt's rushing statistics and just his overall carries. And then down the stretch, when Nick Chubb came back, he wasn't really that involved, combined with the fact that he had only one more catch than he had. Hunt had one more catch in 2020 that he had in 2019, but he played 8 more games. So his role in the passing game was not consistent at all. I don't know. I don't know why people treat him so much differently than like a Jamal Williams or a Gus Edwards. I get it. He should be higher than them, but he's much higher than them. And I avoid him. What do you think about
I took him in first time this season, which was in round 6, and I thought that was good value. I think anything before that is a little bit too risky for me, because I do think he's better than that group. He's better than Jamal Williams. He's better than A.J. Dillon. He's better than Gus Edwards, that group of guys. And again, I'm saying that assuming that the starters in front of those guys are obviously healthy and playing. It's a different conversation if those guys are the starters on their respective teams. But he's going to play in tandem with Nick Chubb, but he's not going to maximize his value if Nick Chubb is healthy. We saw that once Chubb came back. That was the real frustrating part. It wasn't the beginning of the season. It was after the 4-game absence for Chubb, because in the 4 games that he was gone, and this is what you're buying with the hope of Kareem Hunt, becoming, in the 4 games that Nick Chubb was out, Kareem Hunt was a must-start fantasy running back. So he's still one of the better talents at the position. He's just in an unfortunate situation because the guy in front of him is probably more talented, at least as a runner. And so, you're hoping that the Browns use Kareem Hunt enough that he could still be a flex, but I think that's all he is a flex. I do not want to draft him as a starting running back.
And then we had also a nice discussion about the players after Kareem Hunt, but I think we really looked at like the Bucs backfield, the 49ers backfield, the Jets, the Broncos, the Cardinals, yes, and the players that you like in that group. You like Damien Harris. But also, who else do you like along with Damien Harris? Who do you look at in round maybe late 6 or 7 or later?
I like taking chances on Michael Carter and Javonte Williams. Carter has a clearer path to being the featured guy for the Jets. So that's exciting if the Jets offense, turns things around with the new regime, new quarterback. And hopefully Michael Carter is their guy. I do think Javonte Williams is going to struggle a little bit, but I think by the end of the season, he could have a Jonathan Taylor-like impact to a lesser degree in terms of production, but I do think he will eventually take over that role. So those are two guys I target. And you mentioned Damien Harris. You know, he's a little bit more, he's a little tougher to trust in PPR versus non-PPR because you know he's not going to be involved in the passing game. But I think the Patriots are going to be among the best rushing teams in the NFL with their offensive line back. Cam Newton, I think, is going to frustrate the Damien Harris fantasy manager, but I think also help because I think if there's a better Cam Newton, the passing game will be better. We know the pass catchers will be better. So those are the guys I tend to look for. And if I start my team with one running back and then go heavy on wide receiver, throwing in a quarterback or a tight end in that group, I have no problem with Harris as my number 2 guy and then taking a shot on maybe a Michael Carter or Javonte Williams as that number 2 guy as well.
Yeah, and Javonte Williams, his ADP is a little confusing. He might go well ahead of all of these guys, but we're just going with the Fantasy Pros ADP as of right now. It depends on your league. That might be a wide range for a guy like Javonte Williams. I've seen him as early as round 5. And that's going to do it for our running backs preview here on Fantasy Football Today in 5. Quarterbacks, tight ends, running backs, they're in the books. That means wide receivers are left. We'll talk to you tomorrow.